A new study has found that people widely overestimate the amount of sex crimes committed by foreign nationals. Believe us, we're not shocked about this fact, but it is a myth that has permeated across society. A myth it is indeed. The British public believes foreign nationals are responsible for twice the number of sexual offences that they actually commit, a study has suggested. New research on public perceptions of crime found the public guessed foreign nationals make up twice the number of sexual offenders than official statistics show, 30% compared to 15%. They also estimated foreign nationals make up 25% of the prison population, when in fact they make up just 15%. Back in 2022, the Financial Times' John Byrne Murdoch found an interesting statistic. New for this week's column, I dug into the curious case of British attitudes to immigration. Before the EU referendum, concern about immigration tracked levels of arrivals. Since then, immigration has kept rising, but concerns have evaporated. What's going on? Now, lower down the thread, Murdoch provides an explanation which none of you will find particularly surprising. And this is where the picture grows a little more ominous for us liberals. Public concern may have tracked immigration levels relatively well pre-referendum, but it tracked tabloid coverage, the Daily Mail, even better, and has continued to track it post-referendum. You see, British people's attitudes are largely based, it seems, on how many times the media covers immigrants, not the amount of people coming here. Now, I just want to be very clear at this point. This isn't because British people are stupid. If the information that you're being fed is corrupted and biased, then you have no other way of getting that information. Most people switch on the news to get their news. They don't think about the biases that news comes with, and how it might be trying to sway them politically. I always say you're never too smart to fall for propaganda, and any time that you think you are too smart to fall for propaganda, you need to check yourself over, make sure that you're properly scrutinizing the things that you're seeing and reading, and that you're scrutinizing your own perspective and the biases in your own perspective, and the systemic privileges that you might have when it comes to reading media. Media analysis is unfortunately a constant struggle. Now, of course, the things Murdoch was referring to there were back in 2022 when the Financial Times tracked the Daily Mail. Since then, GB News, among others, Talk TV and others, have become more prominent, and the debate surrounding immigration has become even more right-wing. Damien, none of us are surprised at this story, but it's not good enough to simply explain that attitudes have changed due to propaganda. We all know that. The question is, what can we do about it?
Well, indeed, you're straight back to question number one, aren't we? It's media reform again, isn't it? If the media's driven this for years now, and it's all gone along, broadly speaking, in line with Nigel Farage because they love him, because he makes bank, he's cash every time they get him on there. It's ratings and all that sort of thing. So obviously, whenever he just comes on, he starts bleating about migration or immigrants or asylum seekers, and he'll be stood on the cliffs of Dover and he'll be pointing at small boats, or trying to, and squinting in the background to see if he can spot one, as if he's some sort of depraved version of Captain Mannering defending the beaches. It's people have, I think, got tired of it, a lot of it, for hearing nothing but people bleating about immigration reform, basically standing on a platform of nothing other than migration. Although I think it's taken a little bit of a turn. I think as much as propaganda can absolutely fool anybody, I think the propaganda has sort of worn itself thin, either because people have just got sick of having years of this nonsense handed to them. We've got all this migration coming over in small boats when it's like 5% of the grand total. But they certainly seem to be set on picking on PIP claimants right now and targeting the disabled by saying they want to scrap that if they get into power. And now it just seems like, well, they just jumped from one demographic that they feel they can punch down on and get away with it and win votes over to another. And it just seems to be their stock in trade. They don't actually have anything to stand for. And now they're just moving on to the next culture war as they see it. Immigration's fallen sharply as well. I think net migration's down to 171,000 from 331,000 in the last year, and that's below the peak in 2023. So people, as much as we can say the media have driven this nonsense over migration and the level of it and the impact of it, and they're coming over here to steal our jobs and snatch our carrots and kill the firstborn and what have you else that they might try to sell us through the media. The media is also cut through, or the media that matters, who has carried the right stories, have cut through and said, the numbers have come down. Yet the political, narrative of that has not. So maybe the immigration panic is fooling fewer people, and this is why reform is suddenly pivoting. I would like to think this is why they've had to pivot. I don't much like the direction they've gone in as a carer, but it speaks volumes about what that party is all about. And I think hopefully people might start to see through that a bit. But ultimately, when it comes to this story and it comes to propaganda, so much of it is promoted in mainstream media outlets. And if there was proper regulation, they wouldn't get away with it. They'd be held to account to it. People would be able to report them to the regulator for it. And there would be consequences for that. They would have to do something like that. You or I, if we said something false and we were reported to in press about it, we would have to issue corrections. There is nothing forcing these outlets to do it. Absolutely nothing, because Ipso is more likely to give them a slap on the wrist and say, there, don't do it again, you naughty boy. It's not the same impact. And when they're so much bigger and so much more powerful and have so much more reach than we do, there's something seriously wrong in this country without it. So again, we've come full circle today.
Absolutely. But of course, I fully agree. I also think there's something worth bringing up, which is so much of right-wing feeling and right-wing sort of political movement is sort of centered in sexual insecurity. Like, sexual insecurity, I think, has a lot to do with it. And it's about control as well. It's about sexual insecurity and control. And I think there's a big question here, which is why sex crimes. It's always sex crimes. Like, by the way, it also was in Nazi Germany. The Der Stürmer, Julius Streicher's Nazi magazine in the 1930s, used to love printing like what the historian Richard Evans described as borderline pornographic depictions of Jewish men assaulting German Aryan girls, white German girls. So the far right's always had this kind of obsession with the foreigner, the other, coming here to assault women in this country, and the whole protect our women and girls thing. What's your sort of read on that, and how that sort of how and why that sort of has manifested in the way it has?
Well, sexual offences and all crimes of that nature obviously need to be taken seriously. But as we started at the beginning, the figures with relation to migration and sexual offences have been overblown. Now, there's propaganda, therefore. So it's the latest angle, if you like, that is being weaponised in order to bring migration and asylum seekers and whoever else back into the frame again, back into the story, to try and basically say, right, okay, this is what they're doing now. They're not enough that they're coming over here and stealing our jobs. They're doing this to our women now. Look at these grooming gangs here. And of course, the only grooming gangs over here on the news will be the one where the people are all brown. Never mind the fact that most grooming gangs are run by people who are very much white. And we know that because the facts are there, but they don't get reported. Yada, yada, yada. We're back to the media again. So what do we do about it? I mean, obviously it's got to be called out. It's got to be reported. But who do we report it to? Because they're not regulated. We can argue it with Ipso, but you're only going to get the editor of such and such a newspaper basically having his turn in the hot seat to do the regulation bit, and he'll look at his colleague at such and such a paper and think, okay, well, you've been a bit naughty about that. That wasn't very good. We will send you a strongly worded letter and tell you not to do it again. But that's as far as it goes. There's never any consequences. Where's the fine? Where's the punishment? Where's the consequence? When you've scapegoated an entire demographic who have fled God knows what. I don't want to listen to people saying they should have stayed in France or wish they'd drowned in the damn channel, because frankly, you're pond scum. It's nothing to do with that. They've escaped war. They've escaped persecution. They've escaped famine. We were talking about climate change here. We're moaning about how hot it is here. Try living in North Africa or something like that right now. If this carries on, we're going to have more people like that. you
Well,
know,
it's not
coming to
just that.
milder climes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that. It's also that in a world where climate change is coming on faster than we expected, Britain's climate is due to get hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, and then rapidly get colder and colder and colder and colder, because of the changes in world jet streams, and the particular weather that we were likely to get if the climate continues to change as it is. It's very plausible in the near future that people in this country will have to rely on the kindness of strangers in maybe not other countries as far away as France, but simply other countries like people in England relying on the kindness of people in Wales or Scotland where there's more land and houses can be rebuilt or there are cooler climates so they suffer less wildfires. And if you get treated if you treat migrants that way, expect that treatment to be reciprocated upon you if you are internally or externally displaced from your country. It's just the reality that's coming to bite us very, very soon. We tend to think of ourselves as immune to the to becoming refugees or forced migration. I'm afraid that history is about to leave us very, very quickly, particularly with the incoming of food shortages, wildfires, all of that sort of thing. And a lot of it, by the way, I always like to say this, a lot of it comes down to your understanding of what is your problem with a migrant rapist. Is your problem with a migrant rapist the fact that they are a rapist? Because then I could agree with you. But if your problem is with the fact that they are a migrant, then I disagree with you. A migrant rapist is no worse than a nationally born rapist. A rapist is bad because they are a rapist, not because they are a migrant. And if you can understand the fundamental difference between those two things, I think you can understand the left-wing position.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're quite right. I mean, I was just thinking to myself, well, if it's going to get as bad as you were just saying, I'm going to trade on that Swedish ancestry of mine and I'm off. But too remote. But yeah, no, it's you make perfectly valid points. I mean, you get areas of the country that have been a little bit better off. I mean, my brother-in-law lives in Scotland. He's had nothing but rain. He's been quite miserable about all the fact that we've had wall-to-wall sunshine here in Cornwall, even though my garden is now growing hay rather than grass. But so much the case for the rest of the country too. And of course, you mentioned Wales, but South Wales has had horrendous fires. So it's not necessarily the safe refuge.
True.
We're a small island. You know, our climate, we're very spoilt climatically because we have this jet stream which keeps us warmer than we should be at our latitude. We're on a par with Newfoundland and bits, areas like that. Bit chilly. So it could get a lot worse if as you said, it gets warmer and warmer and warmer. For now, you'll have this. I can't remember what the oscillation is. This bit of cold water that the jet stream sort of keeps there near Iceland. And once that's gone, then that's it. We're in deep freeze. Then we're going to end up more like Scandinavia. But in the meantime, we go through horrendous crop shortages. Farmers are struggling right now to produce enough food, so there's going to be food shortages going through this winter. They're already using winter feed for their animals. What are they going to use in the winter, in which case, because they're robbing Peter to pay Paul and they know it, well, what help is there going to be for them now? Oh, there's no more EU subsidies or anything like that. Oh, it's Nigel Farage again, wasn't it?